for me, United is just a name, not a team. So, anyways, so a United. No, man, no. So why AC Milan? You briefly you talk about AC Milan in general. Why AC Milan though?
As I said earlier in my previous podcast, that there's nothing better than pushing yourself out of your comfort zone and learning from the experts, earning their opinion. So, growing up, two sports to which I was really drawn to were cricket, obviously, and then tennis. Maybe because it's my father likes the game and we play it every now and then also. So, for me, it's a joy. Or it's because it's the game that has lots of lessons. I'm sure a lot of people look up to Novak Djokovic, Roger Federer, Rafael Nadal, or in the past Boris Becker, Andre Agassi, Van Lendl, Jimmy Connors, lots of names. But I look up to because for their work ethic and their joy for playing. So for me, today's podcast, which is really special, I would say, which I recorded with Christian, well, in many ways, it was joy because he recently covered the Australian Open, attending a lot of press conferences, which I'm sure was a joyful moment for him. Christian Montegan, who is associated with the first serve and the inner sanctum as a sport journalist covering many sports, as I said, got the privilege to cover Australian Open recently. So dive into this conversation with me, and I'm sure you'll have a privilege of getting to know athletes a little more deeply, which Christian is sharing with us. Let's jump now.
So how have you been, man? How is everything going in Melbourne right now?
Yeah, same old. Obviously, in terms of the weather and stuff, summertime's almost over. So, it's been interesting. Even with the tennis as well, having to customize, plays leaving overseas. Getting used to the time zones, the European time zones. They're playing some tournaments in Dubai, Mexico. So, yeah, it's a shame that they're not still here playing in Australia in our time zone. But yeah, all going good.
While you're just coming here, I just researched about you and just got to know that you're AC Milan fan, didn't you?
Yeah, big Milan fan. Yeah, big Italian league fan. Yeah, supporting it since I was about 7 or 8 years old. Idolizing some of the big players over there. Kaká, Inzaghi, Pirlo, all these players, these top players. Obviously not the same club. Less money now involved in the club, but yeah, still love it.
So yeah, Australian Open, because I have a lot to discuss with you in reference with tennis. Actually, if you remember, I texted you initially and said that we want to discuss cricket as well. But you said tennis is something that you're more interested in, the other sports, right?
Yeah,
Which is somehow important. I'll tell you what happened in India. India is all about all sports, but more predominantly cricket, right? Because the population who plays cricket a lot and actually knows cricket a lot rather than other games, which I think it's a wrong move, right? Because you
yeah,
have to expand your horizons and know other games as well. So it's an important thing. So yeah,
yeah,
tennis, Australian Open, and your press conferences. I want to talk about everything. So, if you
yeah.
remember, you covered a lot of press conferences, right? How was your experience first, and then we moved to the domestic level as well in the tennis in Australia. So with their covering press conferences, talking to other people, different personalities, right?
Yeah, definitely.
How is it? How is it?
Yeah, definitely for sure. I mean, it was obviously my first time, having a media accreditation over there. First time, interviewing players, going to press conferences. So yeah, completely new experience for me. And you touch on the personality. Someone like Daniil Medvedev, he'll just speak his mind and say whatever he wants. So players like that, you need those personalities in the game. They just open up. They say, what they think. And yeah, I mean, to interview players like Djokovic was a surreal experience. 24-time Grand Slam champion. It was, yeah, again, very surreal. But I mean, yeah, just the way it was all set up, the way it was all organized, just to be in that environment, have that experience behind me, yeah, very valuable.
So Novak Djokovic, right, over there, and what the conversation you had with him, with the press conference
Um,
which you happened, yeah.
yeah, so obviously there's other media people in there asking questions. I was fortunate enough to ask a question to him, and I think just trying to remember back to my question, I asked him something along the lines of, you know, obviously he's about 36 years of age now. So I just asked him, is this sort of, it was a convincing win after I interviewed him. So I asked him the question, after all these sort of convincing wins, there's come a time where, family and stuff, are more important priorities in life. And, he's obviously won everything. And he said, yeah, he's still motivated to continue on, keep breaking records. But he said the more time goes on that he's missing his family more, which I thought was very striking. So that could suggest that, maybe he is feeling that bit of extra pressure, getting the questions in about whether, is he going to retire or not, having to, sort of deal with all that sort of stuff. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I think Djokovic will definitely last at least another couple of years. I think he's still got a lot left in the tank. I mean, he won the US Open last year, the last Grand Slam of 2023. So, I mean, obviously not his best performance at the Australian Open. You had the likes of Yannick Sinner, a youngster coming through the ranks. He's, sort of burst onto the scene. And, yeah, I mean, for Djokovic, though, it's not sort of a downward spiral from here, I don't think. He's still got a lot left more to give. And, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how he goes for the rest of the season.
Dude, I would love to know about Jack Sinner also, because Jannik Sinner is somehow, obviously, you said growing name, and the same thing which we saw about Carlos Alcaraz as well, which we also saw is a diff form also, right? But when it comes to Jannik Sinner, recently I just reading your article and got to know that I think it's 17-0 undefeated streak.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, Jannik Sinner, I think against Alex, right? Alex at the Roth.
Yeah,
so
correct.
talking about youngsters when it comes to Jannik Sinner and especially Carlos Alcaraz. I'll come to Jannik Sinner as well, but I want to know about Carlos Alcaraz first, right? You also just wrote an article about Carlos Alcaraz as well, where you said after Wimbledon, we saw a dipping form, right?
Yeah, correct.
According to you as a journalist, what sort of observance you have for him? Like, what is going wrong with him in the recent years, in recent months, I would say, as a journalist?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of everything. I mean, in terms of, I think he hasn't really nailed down a full consistent 12 months where you can say, for the likes of Djokovic, for example, you know exactly what you're going to get from him each tournament. And for Alcaraz, he's, we can't forget that he's already won 2 Grand Slam titles. It's like we sort of got this massive high expectation of him when he's still so young.
21. He's 21 right now, right?
Yeah, 21, I think. Yeah. So
and I'll tell you one thing. I'm sorry, I'm just interrupting you right now. You said about Novak Djokovic, who is 37 years old. The last year when he won that, I think he came in the finals, right, against Carlos Alcaraz in Wimbledon. He said 36 is the new 26. He said that 36 is the new 26. So he's 26 right now, maybe 27. No, man, you're saying something. Yeah, you're saying.
Something. No, you're right. But I mean, like what I was saying before. I mean, he just needs to find that consistency, not just in his form, but his body as well. He's been picking up a few injuries. He rolled his ankle, I think, last week. I believe it was the Argentinian Open, if I'm not mistaken. So it's little niggles like that. I mean, towards the end of the year last year as well, he suffered a few defeats that you'd think, he should be winning those games. And that's perhaps, he uses a lot of energy on the court, moving around, uses his pace. Perhaps he's not conserving his body properly for a whole 12 months. And that's sort of the reason why after Wimbledon, which was, mid-year, that July period that, we sort of experienced that drop off from him. And if he's able to, get together with his coach and fitness team and try and, gather a better strategy as to how to manage the body, fitness-wise, just to prolong, I guess, like I said, just getting a great full season under his belt because, even as well, the pressure on him. I mean, I remember when he won the US Open a couple of years ago, he actually beat Yannick Sinner in the quarterfinals, but Sinner had a match point. So, I mean, Djokovic wasn't involved in that tournament because of the vaccine rules. I mean, if Sinner won that point, if Sinner won that point, then you'd be saying, Sinner's the next big thing, he's a Grand Slam champion. But Sinner was actually under the radar coming into the Australian Open, all the focus on Alcaraz. And here we are, him underperforming. So, interesting to see if he can, pick up and improve for 2024.
Yeah, 2024. We have to talk about Nick as well. Nick, obviously, Nick is something which I'm also following when he came, I think 2022, if I'm not wrong, when he played against Novak Djokovic in finals, right?
Yeah, it would have been, yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Wimbledon, and obviously from there I started following, and also his career saw a lot of drawbacks, a lot of dip. I would love to talk about that, but before that, I want to know how. And he's Australian, by the way, so for you, it's also a big thing. How tennis works in Australia, I would love to know, because every place in the country have a different sort of sets and rules, right? We have different competitions. What about Australia? How Australia treat tennis players? I want to know from you.
Yeah, I mean, to sort of answer in a different way, I think sort of the development phase of players coming through is a bit different here in Australia in the sense that, our top players for the men's, for example, we've got Alex de Minaur, who's now ranked in the top 10. I think he's number 9 at the moment on the live ranking. So he developed all his tennis skills, playing in Spain. And,
Okay.
there's sort of a lack of, I guess, not a development, I want to say, but sort of a development in the sense that to get to that top 10 level. And obviously he experienced, most of his tennis life in Spain. We know how many good Spanish players Spain have produced over the years. And Australia just can't seem to, I guess, since the days of Leighton Hewitt, can't seem to produce, their own sort of, top players, on the world stage. And, Isla Tomljanovic, again, on the women's side, grew up a lot in Croatia, learned to tennis there. I mean, Australia does have, I think, 10 or 11 players in the top 100 in the men's, but they're all circling around, top 50, 70, top 80, but where's the sort of next step to break through and, challenge the very elite? So I think that's where, the talent development phase perhaps is sort of lacking in sort of the grassroots area, the junior development phase. And yeah, it's an interesting discussion.
As I said, when was remember that question paper that I have for you initially when I just want to know from you, right?
Yeah,
All the questions. Yeah, before
yeah,
I just want to take this as a reference because obviously I want an open-ended conversation, not yes and no, but
yeah,
still I really want to discuss all these sort of things, right? As I said
yeah.
about Nick Kyrgios, so let's talk about Nick Kyrgios first, right? Nick Kyrgios did really well till the Wimbledon thing, and obviously after that normally we see him in the commentator box recently in the Australian Open, right, with a full-on
Yeah.
entertainment and every sort of a thing. So but he fallen a lot of times, right? Knockout finals, a lot of times knockouts. Obviously, you mentioned about his injuries, right? If you remember your interviews also when you talk about his injuries. So, what about that? I would love to know your insights on this, like how Nick Kyrgios you see in the future.
Yeah, obviously, like you said, after that Wimbledon final against Djokovic, he tasted a bit of, the Grand Slam final sort of environment. Perhaps people were saying, the talent's wasted, he'll never get to the top again. And I think once Nick realized that, okay, I really can compete with the best because we know he does have the talent. He does have the potential. It's always been about the mental side of the game and whether he can, control his emotions on the court, which has always let him down in the past. And then after that Wimbledon final, there was a sense that, okay, he's going to get back on the right track. He's going to sort of compete hard. He's going to focus on his body, which was the case, for the next few months after that. But then US Open happened. I believe it was either the quarters or the semis of the US Open, and then he suffered a bit of an injury. And then after that, he just hasn't been able to recover since. And, we've seen, with the likes of Alcaraz with injuries, like we explained before, it's tough to get back, a consistent playing level. I know they're two different players, but, in Kyrgios's case, he's nearing, the age of 30. So time isn't on his side, compared to a player like Alcaraz. So, I mean, at the end of the day, it's up to Nick whether he wants to, pursue his passion of tennis, keep playing at the very top. Does he still feel he can win a Grand Slam? Because, like I said, he has the talent to do it. But mentally, is he capable of, screwing his head on, I guess?
Yeah. Dude, we are discussing a lot of things about tennis. Obviously, this is a question which I actually have to ask you first. But how your journalism started with sports, man? I just want to know from you because obviously, for everyone, I also ask this because everyone have a different answer about sports journalism. How they came to sports journalism, right? Because there
Yeah.
are a lot of reasons, and a lot of times, sports journalism comes naturally to you. You are not going with it.
Yeah, I mean,
You're an
obviously always.
Australian, I know. You're an Australian, so I know that this is somehow in your genes. But before that,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah, like you touched on. I mean, Australians are known for their sport and their love of supporting different codes. I mean, over here we've got Australian rules football, rugby league, cricket's big as well over here. Soccer and tennis are usually one of the lower sports. Actually, there's other sports ahead of it. But yeah, like growing up, I've always enjoyed sport. It's funny because I actually started, studying business at RMIT, and then sort of had a bit of a change of heart, writing articles on the side, just a bit of a passion, and then that sort of grew into pursuing a career in journalism. So hopefully, all goes well. Still learning the craft, still trying to get the experience under my belt. But yeah, it's been obviously a great experience so far, even with the Australian Open, for example, with the media accreditation, just to get that taste of, real life journalism. It's very invaluable, and very honoured to have that privilege to cover the Australian Open. One of the biggest tournaments in tennis, if not the biggest. So it's a slow grind. Enjoying it, and looking forward to seeing where it takes me.
I think, look, for me, when I'll tell you about mine. So for me, when it comes to journalism, obviously it started with sports cricket first initially, and because, like I said, it's big here. And when it comes to other sports as well, so for me, I play tennis as well. I play tennis eventually now as well, the lawn tennis games, because we have a area in the campus where we have a lot of options to. So before I started, I also, because my dad used to watch a lot of matches of Boris Becker, the past players, right? The golden boy, Boris Becker, and eventually when I got to know about Andre Agassi, the recent one, right, the 1990, 91s, got to know actually. So I was born after 2000, but eventually got to know these players are really massive, man. Andre Agassi's game is just, he's like a Novak Djokovic of his time, right?
Yeah,
definitely. And then Roger Federer, Rafael Nadal. We saw a lot of names after that, which is actually cliche now to discuss about Roger Federer, Rafael Nadal. Okay, so for us, it's for me, it's a big name, and eventually tennis started, and other sports as well, but predominantly tennis and cricket is something which I always follow, right? And then suddenly there a lot of bombast happened when we saw the guy who won 24 times Wimbledon champion, Novak Djokovic. So it's obviously it's fortunate that we born in an era we can see a lot of games. Nothing better than that. So journalism is something which obviously excites me, because you're the first person who gets an information rather than, you're not the second one. You are actually the provider. So be the provider and do the best work. That's all we can do right now.
Yeah, exactly.
So Novak Djokovic, before we move forward, like we discussed about Nick Kyrgios' career, right? Nick Kyrgios. What's his surname? Can you just give me a nice brief? It's Kyrgios, right?
Kyrgios.
Yeah. So it's difficult for me to pronounce right now. So Novak Djokovic. When we see any players in any walk of life, any sports, age of 36, 37 is an age where we see a lot of dip when it comes to health, right? He is healthy, he can play a lot, no issues about that. But still, it's a fact that we see a lot of lack of reflexes, the lot of technique flaws we started to criticize about a lot of things. And eventually as a age, it's also, we saw a lot of disease in the performances, any sports. And what we see first the player who actually winning a lot of games. Suddenly, yes, he won, like you said, US Open, but how you see Novak Djokovic career in future? If you can ask you, Novak Djokovic is somehow a big name, by the way. So
I mean, it's interesting because for those who aren't sort of familiar with tennis, there's obviously tournaments every single week of the year, basically, besides maybe the December period where players have a bit of a break and then return in January. So players can obviously choose, especially when you're top ranked, like Djokovic has been number one, you can pick and choose which tournaments you want to compete in. And, the past couple of years, Djokovic has decided, okay, I'm going to be smart about it. I'm going to manage my body better. I think last year he only entered in about roughly, I think it was maybe 13 or 14 tournaments, which isn't a whole deal, compared to some other players who compete, double, even more of that, throughout a 52-week season. So, I mean, in that respect, I guess if Djokovic isn't playing enough tennis and he continues on that trend, I worry for him a bit, in the sense that, just that match sharpness, once you get older, obviously the talent is always going to be there, but, once the body gets older, physically, he's not going to be the same, whether people like it or not. He's human at the end of the day, So there's always going to be that bit of a drop off. And I just feel with the likes of Sinner, Alcaraz, so many other youngsters coming through, seeing these 18-year-olds, Jakub Menzik as well, a young Czech guy coming through in Dubai, made the final. Yeah, so many players. And I think Djokovic now, at his age, again, has to sort of, I guess,
Sure.
start over again in the sense that he's got to learn, the techniques and the styles of play of these new players to try and keep up. And that's going to get overly difficult as time passes by. But that's not to say that, Djokovic isn't going to, progress deep into tournaments in the next 12 to 24 months. I still think he's capable of making a few more Grand Slam finals, potentially winning a couple or more, but he's definitely not going to have an easy ride, that's for sure.
It's interesting you said about talent is going to be there always, right? So I remember I was listening to an Olympian from India. He won a gold medal in 2008, 10-meter air rifle, Abhinav Bindra. When he retired in 2014, he said, a lot of people asked that you're just 32, 33. Why you just chose to retire? He said, I recognize my fading talent. Okay.
Yeah.
It's a fact that how much talented you are, there always one person who is going to be one step ahead for you, a youngster.
Yeah.
Right. If you know how to chip it bit, it's okay, it's fine. You can actually, somehow it's better to enjoy the game. I think Novak is on that phase where he wanted to enjoy more games rather than winning games, right?
Yeah.
Like we talk about Rafael and Roger Federer at one point of a time, that he just want to play, right? And that's what gives more satisfaction rather than winning a lot of games. As a journalist, we want to see and we want to be a critique a lot of times, but it's a fact that as a sportsman, a lot of times they just want to play rather than just winning the games. It's a fact, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because from past 15 years, if you have 24 Grand Slam, you definitely want to win 25, but still, it's fine.
100%.
Yeah. Uh, uh, I want to know, Christian, about look. So, for my listeners, are you aware about the financial structure about these opens? Like how anyone can enter? If you can just give me a basic, I know about that. How anyone can select. You said about pick and choose the top players, the top ATP ranker players, who can get into choose which tournament they want to play or which tournament they don't want to play. So if you can give my listeners a small brief that how people get selected to these all the opens.
Yeah, it all depends on their ranking. So obviously there's different tournaments. There's, so ATP is the men's, WTA is the women's. So for example, taking the men's, for instance, there's ATP 250 tournaments where if you win that tournament, you get 250 ranking points. ATP 500, then 1000, which is considered as, probably the biggest tournaments besides the Grand Slams, which, if you win a Grand Slam title, you win 2000 ranking points. So obviously, for a Grand Slam, for instance, I think it's the top 90 or 100 players that automatically get into the main draw. And then after that, same as any other tournament, the rest have to qualify to get in. So that might be either 2 or 3 rounds of qualifying to get in, depending on the tournament. And yeah, like you said, with the prize money as well, it just varies. The Grand Slam is ridiculous now. Australian Open was over, I think, $4 million in prize money for both the men's and women's, which is ridiculous. So much money involved. But yeah, like I said, and you touched on before, it's just about, picking and choosing your moments when to play, because having to play every single week, it does take a toll on the body, and you have to sort of be smart in that sense to manage your schedule properly. And some players are actually better than doing it than others. Some players get a bit eager and ahead of themselves, wanting to keep pushing forward and play, get their ranking up, where they should be thinking, conserve themselves and look ahead to the rest of the year.
Yeah. I want to talk about Aryna Sabalenka as well. The player who is actually. So, like I said, like in the question, if you can see that for me, it's like a Serena Williams, who's upcoming Serena Williams. I saw a lot of her reels, always fun mood, like Serena Williams was when on her days. Obviously, a lot of people talk about his like forward technique as well. The forehand shot we talk about. I think you also covered Aryana press conference as well, right?
Yeah, I did.
How was it? Like I said, different personality, different experiences. So for you covering Aryana's performances and the press conferences, what sort of insights do you have for her?
Yeah, even covering her that tournament, you could tell there was a sense of, that pressure taken off her shoulders, because recently, the year before, she just claimed her first Grand Slam title, and before that, there was always pressure on her to perform and win these Grand
There's a
Slams.
sense of positivity as well, right? There's a sense of
Yeah,
positivity over there, right?
yeah, exactly. And you see in those viral videos that her dancing on the court, just a
Yeah.
different mood. Yeah, she's very happy, and that's what you need as a player. It's a very individual sport. It can be isolated. You need that bit of fun as well. It can't all be serious, and that's the way she manages it. That's her sort of coping mechanism for it, and obviously it's worked. She's won another Australian Open title. Yeah, even in the press conferences, she was very nice to all the journalists. Speaking her mind, what she thinks, looked very relaxed, and yeah, if you're relaxed like that off the court, you're going to bring that 99 times out of 100 onto the court. And yeah, she looked very like herself. And yeah, great to see her playing some of her best tennis.
Yeah, yeah. Yes, I think, look, like I said, Serena Williams for me is just like a new, Aryna over there. Dude, I was listening to Lendl Pace. You know about Lendl Pace, right? The Indian tennis player, right? Lendl Pace.
Yeah.
I remember he was talking about the prize money over there when it comes to prize. Sometimes what happened, because like you said, it's an individual sport, right? It's an individual sport where sometimes, because you have to pay for your hotels as well, the accommodations as well, and also coaches as well. Like if you have an Andre Agassi as a coach, like Novak Djokovic had in past, you have to pay up millions and millions of dollars, right? So it's a look. It's an expensive game, at the end of time, it's an expensive game, right? So do you see how, when it comes to any lower middle class or any people who from Australia, are there facilities are for from the government which they provide for the players, like any scholarships or any sort of a things for the upcoming tennis talent?
I think there might be a couple of scholarships offered, but tennis is a sport where you've got to really make it on your own. I mean, there's sort of a dispute between, the top 150 to 200 players in the world racking up most of the prize money, and you've got the lower players in the rankings. They've got to pay for their own accommodation, their own flights, pay for their own equipment, pay their coaches. Some of these players can't even afford to have their own coach, and how are you supposed to survive and make it into the top elite when sort of the top players are being sort of handed it to them on a platter. So I guess that's it's a very interesting sort of dynamic as to where to draw that line, because we need to be helping these future stars as well. Not everyone is born rich. We need to help these players as much as possible, and there's even a ATP Players Council in the men's where Novak Djokovic and another player called Vasek Pospisil is leading that charge, and sort of, they're actually helping these younger players, these lower ranked players to sort of, gain more rights, to more freedom financially, to help them, pursue, or give them a better chance to pursue a tennis career. So, I mean, it's funny because Djokovic is, I guess, competing against these players. Yeah, he's helping them at the same time. So, yeah, very interesting dynamic.
I think Novak Djokovic and his wife have a foundation, right? Djokovic Foundation.
Correct, yeah.
I would like to ask about sports betting as well. I think sports betting is something which is also an important part of Olympics game. I said why. I'll tell you why. In England, a lot of times crowdfunding money works. When you see that a lot of Olympic medals we see from the Indian rowing team and other sort of corporates, and crowdfunding provides an infrastructure. Crowdfunding as in sports betting money. What about Australia? How Australia sees sports betting? Same word, right? Sports betting or gambling.
Yes, yeah, same thing. It's pretty big over here, actually. Yeah, at the same time, you're right what you said with everything there, but we need to make sure that there's no sort of corruption involved, this sort of thing, because we have seen in tennis, specifically over the past few years, that there has been a couple of match fixing scandals, this and that. So
Match fixing.
that's where across the world, not in Australia, but
Yeah.
that's where it can get a bit prickly in that sense. But yeah, I mean, obviously you need funding and sponsors, that sort of thing, which they do provide. But yeah, nothing much else to add, really, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah, or just with Indian tennis in general, you got a couple of players. You got Bopana, who won the doubles with the Australian Matt Ebden at the Australian Open. You got Saman Nagal playing really well in the men's singles. I guess, how is the development of tennis in India? How is sort of that development sense? Is that, do you have a lot of courts to to train on all this, the financial side of it? How is all that going in India?
Like you said, it's totally individual sports, right? Individual sport, like any other lot of times, a lot of Olympic sports are individual, so the same as it is, right? It's an individual sport where if you have a passion, if you have a talent, then like when I was asking about the government funding, so yes, because of the tournaments that we do a lot of times, especially after 2018, 2017, we have a lot of tournaments like Halo India, with which we actually cover talents from the younger side, right? Under 13, under 15, we nurture those talents, which actually helped
Yeah.
you. I think, and that's what you need from the country, right? Talking about tennis grounds, yes, we do have a tennis grounds, but for that you have to go to stadiums, right?
Yeah.
You can go to clubs as well, like a different normal, gymkhanas we say in India. Gymkhanas means in the club, the
Yeah.
clubs for the recreation club in general, right?
Yeah.
And if you play well, if you can practice over there, okay. When it comes to, like I said, in my campus, in my where I live, we have a tennis grounds over there, so we can go and play over there. Things are nice, but the same one of a time, because India is actually cover three layers: rich, upper middle class, and lower middle class. The lower classes,
Yeah.
and that is actually a issue. And this is a reason I really want to know about Australian side, because somehow in Australia, in other part of our country, we see a lot of scholarships provided by government. Like I said, the crowdfunding also involved in it to help this young talents who don't have a money around it. And that is something which, it actually hurts a lot of time to a lot of people, because you have a talent but you don't have a money, then what will you do
Yeah.
to it? And this is something which is a huge subjective matter in all over the country, where people actually uh, lose the sport because they don't have a money.
Yeah.
So this is something which I'm actually looking at it, right? Because obviously for me to discuss about this, and if you can generate an answer, so you can actually help the government, man, right?
Yeah.
Nothing better than that. If I get an answer from you, then definitely I'll write and say, "Oh, Christian, help me in this. Just provide this maintenance over there."
Sure, I think. I mean, even soccer as well. I mean, obviously India participated in the Asian Cup last year. How is that sort of growth for you going? Because obviously with your population, I
When
think,
it comes
yeah,
to like talk about soccer, we see a development after ISL. Every and that's what Christian I always mention, that you have a BBL, right? Big Bash League, to develop cricket as well.
yeah,
Okay, when it comes to football in India, we have IPL for cricket. So after just seeing that what IPL can do for you financially, and also develop a lot of talented players, right?
yeah,
ISL really helped in the soccer field for India a lot of times. When we see Sunil Chetri doing well for India, because now he can play more games. Now he is more busy with the games rather than just looking for the games, because India don't play in football World Cup, right?
yeah,
And which actually it's a difficult situation for a lot of people. After, like, what's in your bag if you don't play World Cup? Like, if you play World Cup, then you have a time to prepare, and if you don't,
yeah.
so you can indulge in a lot of matches, so nothing better than that. What about Australian soccer, man? Australia play a lot of domestic
Yeah,
fund.
we've got the first tier, the domestic competitions, just named the A League. We're having the second division come in the next year or two. This A League started back in 2005 when we had the old National Soccer League, the NSL, where you'd have sort of more community-based clubs, whereas now in the A League it's more just city-based. You've got the Melbourne, Adelaide's, and it's only a 12-team competition now with a few more teams, coming into the fold, getting expanded from scratch. So yeah, we're still building on that front, but in terms of the development, the youth is really promising. We've got a lot of players playing overseas for a few European clubs. Not the same as, back, 20 odd years ago when we had Mark Viduka, Harry Kewell, all these players, these Aussies playing in the Premier League. It's not to that same caliber, but, we're getting there. And I think on the rankings, we're about 23rd. So, I mean, off the top of the last World Cup we had, it was pretty positive, making the round of 16 first time since 2006. So, there's positive signs there. I think there's a lot of good youth coming through. Got Nestor Irankunda, just signed for Bayern Munich just, a few months ago. Joe Gauci signed for Aston Villa. So these are players that are all coming from the A-League. So I mean, if you've got producing players there that are, overseas clubs are interested in, then we must be doing something right. So, yeah, very positive on that front.
Yeah, recently you saw the game against Liverpool versus United, recent one. Yeah,
Yeah, I did.
Liverpool
Yeah.
won. Thankfully, Liverpool won. I'm a huge Liverpool fan. Obviously, not the last year, because when last year they played, United won the English Premier League, right?
Correct. Yeah.
I obviously love Manchester United when I saw a lot of games about David Beckham and Alex Ferguson. I think these two, one coach and one player, did really well for the team. But
Yeah.
after Beckham departs, for me, United is just a name, not a team. So, anyways, so sorry, United. No, man, no. So, why AC Milan? You briefly talk about AC Milan in general. Why AC Milan though?
Just growing up, I guess, in an Italian background, I've never been the biggest Premier League fan, just more focusing on Serie A, Italian league. Growing up, watching Champions League, Milan was obviously one of the biggest clubs in the world back then. Won a couple of Champions League titles, had a lot of, world-class quality players in their team, just people you idolize, and you look up to, and sort of makes you follow the game and want to play it, which is the case for me. And yeah, once that happens, you sort of get involved and you start supporting them. And then from there, it's like sort of your second nature, really, just to get up every week and watch them, suffer the highs and lows of everything. But yeah, I mean, it's for every club, really. There's always going to be, the peaks, and then you're going to have to suffer, the down times as well. But it's all part and parcel of being a fan, I guess.
I think Argentina versus France came in 2022 when the keeper E. Martinez, if I'm not wrong, right? I think E. Martinez, because of E. Martinez, I actually fell in love with Aston Villa as well. Aston Villa is doing really well, and obviously E. Martinez obviously improved. Your memories about the 2022 World Cup, if you remember anything? Game, France versus Argentina, and that keeping, if you remember, that one. I think Mbappe hit the shot when he just dragged his leg and he actually helped in the game.
Yeah, I think it was
Argentina
Colomani who missed that, the one-on-one.
Your memories about that?
Yeah, but probably the final wouldn't be the first memory that comes to mind. Probably being, as an Australian, would be that win against Denmark to go through to the round of 16. It was just a surreal moment. We had fans in Melbourne. We've got Federation Square where we gather in public to watch on the big screen, and all the flares going off, all the cheering. It was, crazy scenes, went viral on social media. So, yeah, stuff like that is what you sort of remember the most. And even that game against Argentina, we sort of took the world champions all the way, and we were close to equalising in the last minute and taking it to extra time. So, I mean, it was a great campaign for us. And, yeah, obviously in the final, it was sort of meant to be for Messi, wasn't it? Sort of a last dance sort of scenario. Got his country over the line, just like Diego Maradona did all those years ago. And, just the fitting way to end the tournament.
I'm sure Maradona was watching from the above sky and just blessing the team over there. Yeah. I think last 2-3 questions that I have for you is about where Australia stands in the world football ranking currently.
We're 23rd at the moment.
Ranked. 23rd, right?
Yeah.
You're in the great scene, man. Come on. You are actually every sports playing nation. Come on. Cricket, football, tennis. Any sport that you are not involved in. So, are you aware about Sheffield Shield tournament over there? Sheffield Shield.
Yeah, I am.
You're an Italian background, right? You said about that.
Yeah, correct. No, born here in Australia, in Melbourne. My whole life basically. So, sort of learnt everything over here. Done my journalism, everything. Experienced sporting life here. So, that's sort of my story.
Obviously, you see films in journalism, broadcasting one. What sort of a thing that you have in bag? If you can actually store the chain and say me something about your future prospectus.
Yeah, I mean, obviously after I graduate, it'll be just trying to look for any type of experience I can get, really, whether that be sort of more on the writing side or being involved in broadcasting, whichever way it falls. Really, I'm open to pretty much everything because at the end of the day, sports, like I said, it's my passion. I want to cover the game, especially sports like football and tennis, where I've got a lot of knowledge on, and it'll be just exciting to see what the future holds for me. Obviously, got to put in the hard work. Just keep writing articles, and being involved in podcasts, football podcasts, all of that sort of stuff. Just getting your name out there, which is what I'd advise for any sort of up and coming journalist to sort of pursue. And yeah,
you run a podcast as well, right? You run a podcast.
Yeah, correct.
Well, that's great. What about on just football or tennis? You said about tennis?
Just football.
Okay, this is something I have to research, dude. Because before coming here, I actually Googled everything about you. Not Google. You can say anything. I just how it all started, because obviously podcast is something which actually intrigued me a lot of times. What about you, dude? How started all? So what happened in if you see the podcast is actually growing in every country, okay, from 2019 2020, after COVID, we see a lot of people who actually got into how should I say, in audio platforms, right? And this is something which obviously intrigued me, and I really want to ask a lot of people who are actually running. Like, I remember from Perth, like I said, I was just talking to someone from Perth, and he works at the DR1 podcast. He'll just run the podcast on DR1. So for me, just knowing that how you conduct the interviews, how you talk to other people, is it the solo cast, or you actually go and interview a lot of people like I'm doing right now?
Yeah, it's not just me. It's a few other people, doing the podcast together. So we collaborate, bring different ideas together. We got someone else doing sort of the editing side of it, which is great. We try and get a couple of guests on, which is focused more on the A-League, Australian football in general. Going really well, enjoying it, providing sort of that information to listeners to enjoy and, consume. So, it's been really good.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for this small conversation, I would say, because I'm actually looking for the long-term conversation. But for this, I have to go and research a lot about you and then come here.
It was, pretty good, well-balanced. Asked some very good questions. You can tell you've done your research, which is really good. Obviously, I think tennis isn't your it's not your expertise, but obviously you did your research, and it's important for any journalist, really, any reporter to get that nailed down. So you did well in that respect. I really enjoyed it. Really good.
Yeah. Well, at last, you can say that you have also a podcast. You have to do a lot of things. I think a lot of things for as a sport journalist for you, basically, who covers tennis and football both. You are actually busy 24/7, actually, not for 12 months, I would say 24/7, because you have a US Open, you have Australian Open, every sort of things. So we look for this, and also, all the best for your future stint, man. Yeah.
Perfect. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Cheers. Thank you, man.
Perfect. We'll speak soon.
Yeah.